Hello YouTube! Today we're going to be exploring America's influence on 19th century Asia, particularly China and Japan. And without further ado, let's get started. The United States has a long history of intervening in the international world. Sometimes these end up well, such as in World War II, or quite poorly, as in Operation Condor. Although originally remaining neutral in conflicts such as the Napoleonic Wars, the United States became involved in international affairs even as early as 1842 in China. Originally, America dealt with China like other foreigners, limited to a single port. Within the single port, foreigners were limited to a single part of the city and were to be supervised by the Kohong, merchants who were in charge of controlling foreign trade. However, after Britain defeated China in 1842 and forced them to open up more ports, the United States exploited this victory and demanded the same improved rights as Britain. At this time, China also experienced internal issues. The massive nation of 425 million was not ruled by the vast Han population, but instead Manchu emperors from the north. Although previously pacified and subservient, the waning power of the Manchu rule was clear. Combined with Hongshu Tran's deviant Christian values introduced to him by missionaries from America, the Han-led Taiping Rebellion ignited in 1850, an attempt to create the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Unable to gain the needed support, the rebellion was crushed in 1864, which killed 25 million, mostly non-combatant civilians. During another altercation with Western powers in 1856, China had started another war. After China eventually lost again in 1860 to Britain and the United States and France, the victors demanded trading rights to most of the Chinese coastline. After these unequal treaties and a loss to Japan in 1895, a group known as the Boxers formed to repel Western influences, especially Christianity. Their anti-Western stance garnered the support from the Qing government. They sieged the foreign legations in Beijing, but with the assistance of a massive 8-nation force, were defeated. The war against Japan and the Boxer Rebellion convinced the Han to plan the 1911 Xinhai Revolution, which finally restored rule of China to the Han. Let's now look at another isolated Asian nation, Japan. Just like China, Japan was isolated and only traded with the Dutch in Nagasaki. In 1853, American ships reached Tokyo and threatened to open the nation by force. Seeing what happened to China, Japan decided to submit and modernize to get stronger. In order to modernize, many felt the corrupt shogunate was to be replaced by an emperor. Even though the shogun officially stepped down in 1867, the shogun still retained a military loyal to him. This was unacceptable to the imperial court, who rebelled against the shogun in the Boshin War. Although the shogun's forces were assisted by French advisors, the imperial forces were modernized by the British, and successfully overthrew the shogunate in 1869. Under the young Emperor Meiji, Japan experienced a great period of modernization. Under his 44-year reign, Japanese coal production increased 30 times, silk production increased 12 times, and rail mileage up 400-fold. Not only had Meiji expanded Japanese internal strength, his reign also expanded the Japanese empire. Korea had long been under the Chinese sphere of influence, but Japan recognized the need to take Korea over. In 1894, Japanese forces moved into Korea and faced the Chinese army, where the superior Japanese forces quickly routed Chinese forces out of Korea. The Japanese Navy was also able to invade Taiwan and seize it from China. China sued for peace in 1895 and ceded Taiwan, while Korea shifted into the Japanese sphere of influence. After defeating China, Japan set its sights on Manchuria, but Russia opposed this because of its port cities of Port Arthur and Vladivostok, and the railroad it was building to connect them. Tensions boiled over, and Japan declared war in 1904. Japan first besieged Russian Port Arthur, and then invaded from Korea, pushed the Russians from Manchuria, and then captured Port Arthur. When the Baltic Fleet reached Japan, the Japanese were able to successfully destroy most of the Russian Navy, after which the Americans were able to seal a peace deal. In 1910, Japan annexed Korea, after which Korea would no longer be united. Japan had proved itself an empire and put itself on the world stage. Now what if these nations had not experienced Western influence? I predict that these nations would have been more like Thailand, Although Thailand borders former European colonies, it still remained independent and free of foreign influence. Thailand is not as developed as the other three Asian nations, so I think it ironic how the violent exposure to the West actually benefited some parts of Asia. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like or subscribe. Please help me.